Meeting is being recorded.
So once again, welcome to the OpenJ9 community call. If you haven't already, please put your name and company affiliation into the meeting minutes. And we're going to kick the meeting off with a lightning talk from Theresa.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so great first step. All right, well, my name's Theresa. I'm a software developer at IBM working on OpenJ9. And since Java 14 has now officially been released, I wanted to talk about one of the features, the preview features that came out, which is records. So I'll talk about first why this came out, and then what it looks like when you're writing code and from a VM perspective, and also some of the JCL changes that came along with this. Records is part of JEP 359, and one of the problems it's trying to address is the common complaint that Java is too verbose and there's a lot of boilerplate code that needs to be written. And one of the worst offenders for this is data carriers, so a class that's just designed specifically for an object and to store data. Some of the boilerplate associated with this are getter methods, equals, and hash code methods. And omitting this or not using them correctly can lead to unexpected behavior in applications. So to solve this, records is created to, instead of modeling data in a regular class, we're now modeling data as data. And what this looks like is a restricted form of class. So if you think of enum classes, that's kind of a similar idea where it's a class, but it's restricted for a certain purpose, and records is the same as that, but for data specifically. This is an example of what a record looks like. So you can see on the left, instead of declaring it as a class, you declare it as a record. And then on the right, in between the parentheses, are components that will be stored. And components are the pieces of data that you want stored in this object. So for this example, I have two integers, x and y, and my test record is just the purpose is to store a point in space or a coordinate. So when we compile this, these two lines of code, it generates a lot more than what's just being shown in the Java file. And so it generates a private field for each of the components that are listed, as well as getter methods, toString, hash code, and equals for this record. And these can all the methods can be easily overridden with the same signature if it's written in the Java file. From the JVM perspective, records are treated exactly the same as any other class. There's only a couple of small differences. First is that instead of extending Java-lang objects, it extends Java-lang records, since this is a restricted class. And the other defining feature is that it has a record attribute in the class. And if you're not familiar with class attributes, this is just a way of representing the pieces that are a class. So there's one for fields, one for code, one for methods, one for debugging, or many for debugging, etc. And records is a new addition to that. And it stores component information, including the type annotations and annotations that are associated with each component. Some additional things that might be useful to know if you're going to use this are that every record class is implicitly final, and every component that's declared is also final and private. And also in a record, it's not allowed to have instance fields that are not declared as components. Every other field must be static. And as I mentioned previously, this is a preview feature. So in order to turn it on, right now it's not clear if it's going to be in any other releases, but if you have thoughts about it, it'd be a good thing to share with the community. And of course, if you find bugs please open it with the appropriate VM. Hopefully that's OpenJ9. And to turn it on, you need these extra flags to enable the preview. All right, there's a few API changes that are associated with records. As I mentioned before, there's a Java Lang record class, and this is just an abstract class. Next, there's a record component class that is used to just contain all the information for each component, including the signature and attribute information that I was mentioning earlier. And to retrieve this information, there's a couple of additions to Java Lang class. There's a get record component that will return an array with all the information about each record component in it. And finally, there's isRecord, which tells you whether or not the class you're working with is a record. And that is all you need to know probably ever about records. Does anyone have any questions?
Thanks, Theresa.
Quick question, Theresa. Were there a bunch of new test cases that came in as part of that as well?
In OpenJ9, you mean?
Yeah, and or OpenJDK.
Yes.
Do you know if they're enabled right now, the OpenJDK ones? If I set the command line properties, I think I can just run them, right?
Yeah, they should be. I know I've seen a couple come through with failures that were fixed at one point.
Okay, cool. And then, sorry, did you also add some functional tests at OpenJ9?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, thanks again, Theresa. Next up is the end user issues. So I'll open that link. So we got a GPF, although that was reported on the IBM JVM and really should be reported through IBM channels. So I'm not going to add that one to any milestone. Looks like everything else has been handled in previous meetings and is also in a milestone. So I think we're good. Is Andrew on the call?
Yeah, hi, Peter. So I've not updated these graphs. One thing I've discovered is with the change at adopt to the version 3 API, this script is obtaining figures from the version 2 API, which seems to have, which is now deprecated, and as the figures are diverging slightly from the version 3 values. So what I've got some of my colleagues working on is getting the adopt download tracker updated to provide this similar information, which hopefully won't take too long to get done, next week or so. So it will then be consistent with what adopt is reporting for downloads.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So hopefully in the next week or two, we should have that.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that. So we did announce the milestone 1 builds for Java 8, 11, and 14 for the 0.20 release. The 0.19 release is done. I think I'll just remove that. We're coming up on the milestone 2 for the 0.20 release. We aim to do our tags this weekend after we get our test builds running on the weekend. There are still quite a few issues in the milestone plan. I know some of them are in progress, and if they get in before the weekend, great. If not, we are doing milestone 2 a little earlier this time, so possibly we could get something in after milestone 2. We'll have to look at the risk of the fix and decide whether we want to put it in or not. We're also working on AArch64 for this release, which looks like it's progressing very nicely. There were quite a few failures, but that issue is coming down quickly. So I don't know if it'll be GA quality for this release, but it looks like it's going to be in good shape anyways. The JIT server, I know a lot of JIT server stuff is going in. Marius, do you have an update on what's needed for JIT server for 020?
So I've pushed all the PRs that are needed. And the last one was elimination of the protobus, which has gone into 020. So you merged that yesterday. Now this has to happen at the dock as well. As far as I know, currently we do build the JIT server code for power at the dock, the nightly builds, but not for the 020. That's one small step that we need to do.
Sorry, I missed the last bit.
So we need to enable a JIT server code in 020 based on the last PR for Linux settings.
So Stuart, I believe, has enabled JIT server for Linux already.
For nightly builds, as far as I know.
Okay, so we'll have to make sure that becomes part of our milestone 2 build for the 020 release as well.
Correct.
So Andrew, hopefully you're making note of that. I don't see Simon on the call right now, but something we'll be looking for next week, milestone 2 builds.
Okay.
With P server enabled, JIT server enabled for Linux. Does anybody else have anything about the 020 release? So that takes us to the adopt update. I see somebody's madly typing.
Yeah, just wanted to say the 2 debug image issues that you raised in the API and website repos I've added to the top priorities project. The OpenJDK tests targets that are running against AArch64J9 builds are taking a really long time. There was a fairly long discussion in the Slack channel yesterday about what we do about this. I'd already talked with Connell, who is looking at specifically some of the tests that are taking the longest times. He still wants to be able to run the tests, but they're taking up a lot of our resources due to the fact that it takes forever to finish. So I'm going to likely have to shift the Sanity OpenJDK target to just run on weekends and not nightly, just so we can gain back those machines. So it fulfills the fact that we'll continue to run the tests for Kano, but we can't keep running them nightly. No update on the Java doc item.
Is that blocking AArch64 builds?
It doesn't block anything. It means that we hit the 10-hour default timeout on a lot of stuff. We increased the timeout for a while, but that means the hotspot AArch stuff then waits in a queue, and eventually we're going to max out on machines. So we've had the case where the wait time for machines is 6-7 hours.
Okay, I see.
And then we don't get to all of the testing before the next day's build is ready.
Right.
We end up having to abort. So for now, the approach will be shift that target to weekly, and then once he figures out why some of these things are taking a while. Obviously, part of it is that some of the optimizations that are in plan aren't yet delivered, but he's actively working on it.
Yeah,
Shelley, I've got a faster second ARM machine from Amazon, so I'm going to try that out as well. I've just brought that online and running a couple of tests on it, so we'll see how that goes and whether it's adequate compared to the other one. So that
Okay.
should stop some of the
All right.
bottlenecks.
So I'll hold off on disabling the nightlies for this day. But yeah, let's connect tomorrow, I guess, and find out how it
Yeah.
goes. Okay, cool.
Fine.
I think we have a pretty hefty machine at the OpenJ9 project, and there are
Yeah, I
some
think you've got the
tests.
same one as we've got pretty much spec wise. So they're 32 core, 96 core, and yeah, a decent amount of RAM as well. The one I got from Amazon is 16 core, but hopefully that will be significantly faster than the other ones we've got.
Okay.
Peter, have you enabled the OpenJDK test against that platform?
I'm trying to run the jobs at the moment. I've managed to schedule the wrong thing, but I'm going to sort that out once my internet connection becomes reliable again.
So nothing is enabled for AR64 at OpenJ9. It's just
Okay.
all PR builds and development going on. The people working on AR64 have access to the machine, and they were debugging some issues that only occurred on that machine.
Okay.
So they're just running the tests as needed. We're not doing any regular nightly testing. Since we only have one machine,
Yeah.
I'm not sure we could get through everything in one night.
Okay. Other than that, I'll pass it over to Stuart in case there's other adopt items he wants to mention. Sounds like no.
Out of that, or Stuart just keeled over.
That's right. The update is that we've lost Stuart.
Okay. Probably some of this stuff we don't need here anymore.
Yeah, and I should say the disk space issue was half fixed by we added more disk space on our Jenkins master. The second half is that we will be pushing test artifacts off to some secondary storage location to be determined. Obviously, we can do it. We already have it in the scripts to push to Artifactory, but they were looking at a couple other options before we make the call.
Okay. Which takes us to machines. Don't see Adam on, so maybe we don't have an update for machines. I'll look at the red stuff. So I know we've created the Cent 7 machines at UNB. They're not added to the builds yet. We do have concerns that starting to use those machines might cause problems with our, I think they're all part of one giant machine. So if we knock that machine over, we're not going to have anything at UNB. And because of the lockdown, nobody can go into UNB to restart the machines. So we've decided not to bring those Cent machines up, or not use those Cent machines at the moment. We want to be very careful not to take down anything that we've got running right now. Similarly, with our second Artifactory instance that we're going to get going at UNB, we don't want to start using that heavily in case it knocks over the P-Linux machine. And again, nobody can go in to reboot it. So yeah, the PR is under review, but I don't think we're going to turn it on seriously anytime soon. We aren't actually having any Artifactory problems at the moment. We used to have some download issues, but I think the fix, there's a curl fix that went in so the retries could work properly. And I think ever since that fix went in, we haven't seen any problems downloading from Artifactory.
Yeah, it's just slow from internal Jenkins server. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's very slow. Yeah.
It's slow, but if we knock out that P-Linux box and nobody can go in to restart it, we're going to have 3 machines left for P-Linux, and that's going to greatly impact our ability to.
Yeah. No, I understand. It just it's like an hour to download sometimes. So
Yes,
for people, I'm saying that for people running grinders on the internal server, apologies.
yes. I'm not sure it's always faster to download at home than it was to download at work in the office. So
Yeah.
I've noticed some very slow download times. No guarantee it'll be faster downloading from UNB, but to your home, we'll see. Okay. I don't know if there's anybody to talk about the website. I don't see Sue. I do see Peter.
Sue's not on the call, I don't think. We're working to finalize the design, so it'll be a little while yet, I think.
Okay. Takes us to any other business. Still a mention about creating blog posts for upcoming talks and conferences, which I assume there'll be none since everything was shut down.
Yeah, although I think there's still a valid point to making people aware of the lightning talks, and there's people speaking at different virtual conferences. So I'll still create a template for people to follow for if there are speaking at any virtual events. But yeah, I haven't finished the template. It's in the backlog.
I'm not sure if we've been making the slides available. We put the videos up on YouTube of these meetings. I'll check with Dan and see if we're supposed to be doing something with the slides.
Yeah, because if not, those could be part of the thing we point to from the quick blog post about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Be good to check.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. If there's no other business, I'll talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.